Welcome to Your Career Story Podcast, a show that's designed for rockstar professionals looking for that extra booster shot of confidence in their careers. Whether you're trying to get clarity on a job transition, want some work-life balance inspiration, or need a strategy to snag that promotion or raise, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Jenna, ex-Wall Streeter turned startup junkie who now coaches hundreds of clients, empowering them to take back control of the job search and land their dream job. So sit back, grab a glass of wine, and prepare yourself for your weekly boost of career confidence. Hi, Micah. Thanks so much for joining the Your Career Story podcast. I'm so excited to have you today.
Thanks. Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm excited and honored to be invited.
So for the listeners, Micah and I have known each other for a while now. We used to work together full time at the Muse. And so I'm just really excited to have her come on and talk a little bit about her career story, kind of where she got to where she got to, talk a little bit about what it's like to be a sales leader. But kind of first, before we even start that, why don't you tell us, what did you want to be when you grew up? What was like always your goal as a child? And now what do you want to be now that you're all grown up?
Yeah. It's tough. I think kids, when they're little, they pick, veterinarian or ballerina. I didn't really know. I always knew that I wanted to build relationships with people and be in some sort of field where I was building connections. I didn't know that I wanted to be managing people until later in my life, but I think probably in college is when I started to think about sales as a career. Maybe that's uncommon. I don't know. I don't think I had like a path,
I don't think I really did either as a kid. There was a hot second I wanted to be Mariah Carey, and that was about as clear as I got.
Yeah, exactly. I think I had more of an idea of the skills that I wanted to flex, and the environment that I wanted to be in, but
Sure.
The actual title or the actual job was unclear really until I started in the workforce.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about what your position is now and what you do.
Yeah, so I manage the mid-market sales team here at the Muse. So just like a quick elevator pitch, the Muse is basically a go-to destination and research site for companies and careers, right? So we offer a behind-the-scenes look into a company. We have profiles and attributes, the perks and benefits, basically what is authentic and unique to that particular company so that job seekers can understand that before they go ahead and apply. So my team is responsible for selling the real estate on the platform so that employers can attract that talent that is coming to the Muse.
So you started, I was like around the 33rd-ish employee there. You were before me. So how early on were you at the Muse?
Yeah, so I started at the Muse in January of 2015. The sales team was really small, and there was a big push to grow it through 2015 and 2016 before our Series A raise. So I got in pretty early. There wasn't a ton of structure process, which was really cool to be able to find that. Yeah.
We were in that really, really small office that had everybody kind of lined up on top of each other. It was so fun.
That was actually my favorite office.
I think it was my favorite office too. We were so scrappy back in those days. So how did you even find the Muse? So I found the Muse I was actually looking up Forbes 30 under 30. I was working at the New York Stock Exchange and I saw that Catherine and Alex were on the Forbes 30 under 30 list. So that's how I found out about the Muse. How did you find out about it?
Yeah, so I was working at a different startup and was starting to get restless. I mentioned that to one of my friends, and she actually brought up Catherine. She had seen Catherine speak at a conference.
Who is the CEO of the Muse?
Yes, Catherine is the CEO of the Muse. And my friend said, this company is going to be big. This is going to be something special. This this woman is unbelievably magnetic and smart. So I was immediately drawn to some of the, YouTube conferences and speeches that she had done. But I took it upon myself to reach right out to her. I got her email address, and she agreed to meet with me actually on Thanksgiving Eve. It was snowing. I took a train into the city.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was gross out. And I was just so thankful that she made some time. She was actually traveling, so she was scrambling, and we actually ended up talking for over an hour, but that really spoke to me that she was willing to have a conversation with somebody that, may or may not be somebody eligible to join her team. It just so happened that I guess I was on that day. And she then mentioned something to Doug Freeman at the time. He was the VP of sales. And then Doug and I really hit it off. And, a few weeks later, I was off and running.
So you found her email address is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. And what do you remember what you said to her? To get her, I mean, that's a pretty, people ask me all the time. They're like, Jenna, how do I get in contact with people? And I usually have some templates and some ideas, and it's obviously not 100% going to work 100% of the time. So do you even remember?
God, I actually think that I connected with her on LinkedIn and wrote a personalized note there as well.
Yeah. Multiple touch points.
Yes, multiple touch points. She actually got back to me pretty quickly, but I think the message was very much one of, I followed you. I've recently found out about you. I've then since really done some research, and the Muse seems like it's the next big thing. I would love to essentially pick your brain, right? I kind of hate that phrase, but that's
I did a whole post on this and got lots of angry hate mail about the fact that I said, don't use pick your brain, but right. Keep going.
And it was more just, I would love to learn a little bit more about how you think about the recruiting world and employer branding. And I mean, my prerogative was to see if there was a job opening, right? And she had told me that, they're growing very steadily. And Doug was really going to be the person that I would have to impress. So yeah, multiple touch points. I think a very authentic message, obviously not too long. It was very kind of short, sweet, and to the point. Complimentary, of course, because all of the things that I had read and seen were so exciting to me. And she got back pretty quickly. I mean, I think executives love helping and mentoring others. I think it's something that they actually put time and it sets time aside to do.
Well, I think you were also very specific about what you were looking to gain from that. You just wanted to have a conversation about the space, about the industry. Yep. And what you didn't say though was, hey, here's my resume. I really think I'd be, you know what I mean? You just kind of open up the conversation, which is where a lot of people get it wrong. So give us a little bit of a history on, a career in sales. So were you always in sales? What did that look like when you graduated college? What was your degree? People love hearing a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I probably, like most people, didn't know what I wanted to do. How old are you when you go into college? 17, 18 years old? How does anybody know what you want to be unless you're going to be a surgeon or,
right. And even then.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. So I had no idea. I mean, I went in kind of with a business communications umbrella. I thought that was probably the smartest opportunity. Actually, no, that's not true. I went in as a psych major, but very quickly realized that was not the path I wanted to go down. So I switched my sophomore year, the beginning of my sophomore year, to public relations and picked up some minors. So a minor in statistics, a minor in HR. So it was kind of all over the place.
But you do use psychology in sales, so that works.
I didn't want to pigeonhole myself. I wanted to keep my options open,
Love it. True millennial. I love it. No, I'm just kidding. So you were doing that, and then what happened?
Yeah, so graduated from JMU in 2010, go Dukes, and started actually working in the corporate world. So I was working for this great organization, Stephen Gould, worked there, really familiarized myself with sales process, and was there for about 3 years, but then just got restless, got that itch. And I met this wonderful leader, Bill Lee. He's actually at Samsung now. And he and I developed a great relationship, and I ended up going to work for him at a startup called Quirky. Where I was for about 2 years, really working with big box retailers. So that's, Walmart's, the Home Depots, Wayfair, basically selling people's invention ideas that we had mass produced into these retailers. I was there for, like I said, about 2 years, and then got restless again and came across the Muse, where I have now been for 4 years.
You've been there for a whole time in college. That's a long time. That's a long time in startup years. So let's talk about that a little bit. A lot of people, I feel like nowadays, I get a lot of people that'll come to me and will say, hey, I'm in the corporate world. I really want to switch to a startup. And I feel like everybody has been saying, I want to move to a startup. I want to move to a startup. When I kind of have a conversation with them to really get to the bottom of what they think a startup looks like. So I would love if you could give a little bit of insight and advice on that subject. I don't believe that everyone should work for a startup. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would ask is what is a startup to you, and why do you think that that's the avenue you want to go down? I think it's probably trendy to say that, I work at a tech startup in New York. But I don't think that you can necessarily say that this type of person is going to work at a startup and this type of person is going to work at a corporate. This person's going to work at, and I don't think it should be that way. I think that that's way too broad. And for me, I really like to problem solve, but I think everybody has a different preference. And I think it's really about what your preferences are and what that company offers. I don't think a corporate organization is bad because they're corporate. Maybe one day I'll go back to corporate. It's more about the people. I think it's more about the culture that you're looking for. There are advantages of working at a startup. I will say that. I think, things move fast. So if you like to constantly be in the mix, you like to create some structure out of chaos, then a startup might be for you. Learnings are fast, growth is fast, decisions are made fast. But no, I do not think that everybody is fit for a startup or everybody is fit for corporate. I think it's really just personal preferences. Yeah,
and I think that people have to get honest with themselves about what it is they actually want. Because a lot of people might say, yeah, I definitely want that. And I think I remember having some people who did work at the Muse that actually didn't jive really well because they're like, wait, I actually want structure. I want all these things that actually maybe corporate would have been better for me. And I thought that I want, which is totally fine. You learn as you grow and you try different things. But I have seen that multiple times where people will get into a startup situation and then they're like, oh, wait, I like structure. I like to have a clear, defined path. And depending on the stage of the startup, if it's a true startup or if it's a late stage startup, or there's so many different varying degrees now. But I think it really gets down to figuring out what it is you truly want, and just not what culture is telling you is the successful route to have. Because if you look like even 20 years ago, Wall Street was the way to go, and that's changed. Where a lot of Wall Street is having a hard time capturing the top talent because they're all going to the startups, when actually some of those people might be good in Wall Street. So you kind of see it back and forth a lot of the time. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on being a part of a startup and watching it grow, which has been probably a really amazing experience.
Yeah, it has. I mean, I think more than anything, I feel like I just hear entrepreneurship more and more. And you can work at a corporate organization. You can work at Bank of America or McKinsey and be an entrepreneur. You can work at a startup and be very process oriented. There's definitely overlap. But I do think that the next gen workforce is very drawn to this idea of entrepreneurship and autonomy and being able to build something that, has never been thought of before, or, continue to augment something that maybe is archaic in some ways. I think more than anything, I'm hearing more and more, I want to be an entrepreneur. versus I want to work at a startup.
Which I have my thoughts on that too, obviously, being an entrepreneur.
Of course. But yeah, I think, and the Muse that's kind of our mission, right? We don't classify a company as being a good or bad company or a 5-star company, because that's so polarizing. To you, a company could be a really great company to work, but for me, I would hate it. It doesn't mean that it's a bad company. So same applies to startups.
Yeah, and it's funny. I actually have had a client that wanted to work at a company that another client wanted to leave. So you just see that cycle of there's no right answer to it. It just comes to what you want.
Yep. And I think the hardest part is determining what you want. The hardest part of that entire process is really figuring out what you want.
Right.
And I think that's where people don't know. Maybe they don't have enough experience, or they truly haven't sat down and assessed what they're good at, what they can tolerate, what makes them really thrive. I think that's a really important place to start and spend some time.
Yeah, I honestly agree with you that most people don't really do that. So tell us a little bit about let's talk about sales for a second. Let's pivot a little bit. Tell me a little bit about what are some of the common misconceptions about sales?
Yeah. So I love this question. I think I'm going to tackle 3 because I think that these tend to come up in my world less and less, which is great, but they have. I think the first one, sales is about lying. You are manipulating. You're a grand manipulator. The second one is, the phrase used car salesman. Which I have a lot of problems with that. And then sales is purely a numbers game. So those are really the 3 things that I hear. So the first one, sales is about lying. That is not true. I would say it's more about negotiations, and everything in life is negotiable if you choose to. And you know what? Everybody does it. Everybody sells every single day, and you don't even notice it. We sell our significant other on where we should go to dinner. We sell our boss on why we deserve a raise. We sell if we're a manager, the people that we manage, we sell ourselves to them so that they trust us and maybe encourage them to do something that we need for them to do. So everybody is selling. I think you don't know it. So sales is not about lying. It's very much about negotiations. The second one, so the used car salesman, right? I dislike this phrase for a few reasons. It's definitely salesperson. So let's just set that straight. But I mean, right. I honestly think that used car sales folks probably have some really strong sales tactics. But I think it's really about the execution of those tactics and the relationship that you build and the credibility to your name.
And that used to be probably a more antiquated way about going about this whole sales process. And so that might have been a methodology that was taught way back in the day. Like the always be closing used to be the most common phrase, which is not relevant anymore, right? I always make that joke with clients. I say, it used to be in sales, always be closing. Your version of that is always be connecting. So make sure you're always connecting with people. But I think it's just a different way of looking at it.
Yeah. And my favorite one is that sales is a numbers game. You have to be good at numbers. You have to be analytical. I fundamentally believe that sales is a balance between art and science. The art part is equally as important, if not more important than the number side, right? The art part is relationship building. It's the soft skills, interpersonal skills, the ability to pivot and show value. Whereas the science part is forecasting accuracy and pipeline management, conversion tracking, measurement success, stuff like that. I also think that there's this third part, which is just your intuition, and following what your gut is telling you to do from a sales perspective. So I think the formula there is very much art, science, and a little bit of intuition versus sales being just a numbers game.
Yeah, you're very good at the intuition part. that has always been just you in general are very good at that. So not only in sales, but in your personal life, you listen to your intuition, you listen to your gut, and you go towards that. So it's been something I've always admired about you. So now you have, you've been an individual contributor. So talk to me a little bit about, I think some people, they don't really understand how sales teams work, and every sales team is a little bit different. So, there's different roles within a sales team. Can you kind of break down some of the ones that maybe are at the Muse and what those look like, if you feel comfortable?
Yeah. So our, the Muse revenue organization is broken into several teams. So you have the account management team, which is responsible for the maintenance and growth of our clients. You have the SDRs, so sales development representatives. They are really on the front lines, finding qualified companies, teeing up conversations for our account executives, which is our second team. That is ranging from account executives to enterprise sales executives, essentially selling into the mid-market arena, which is, we define it by 2,500 employees and below. So you kind of have the revenue organization broken out into new business and recurring business.
Okay. So, when we were, when I used to work for the Muse full time, the sales development reps, that's oftentimes a very early on entry point for if somebody's trying to get into sales. That would be probably a position that they might look to get into first to then grow within an organization. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah. I definitely think it's important to, when you're hiring an SDR, to make sure that you're thinking about what their next role would ultimately be, which is being an account executive. If you hire an SDR strictly for an SDR role, you're going to get somebody that is really good at potentially writing emails, setting meetings. But that doesn't necessarily translate to what it takes to be good in sales. So it is really important, if you're hiring for SDRs, make sure that you have the next role for them in mind, because it's not apples to apples. But yes, that is typically the path. And here at the Muse, we have a really great feeder program. We hire great SDRs. Maybe they're right out of college or they have a year or two of experience. We groom them internally for maybe about a year, and then we try to hire internally and from within as much as possible. And then they would come onto my team. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about, so you transitioned, you were an individual contributor, which means that you were essentially a salesperson and you would go out and you would get the deals, close the deals, all the fun stuff. You were wheeling and dealing, for lack of a better phrase, and very successful at it. And then you made a transition from an individual contributor to sales leader. Talk about that transition, because that is not always an easy thing to do, but you handled it with grace.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I would agree. And I also think that there's this misconception that a great salesperson is also a great leader, and that is not true. I think that, and that's with most
professions, honestly. Like, it's not just sales. You see it across the board. That's where I think a lot of companies get, the culture breaks down a little bit, is in middle management, when they promote people who actually are really great at their jobs, but don't show the leadership qualities, but they don't know what else to do with them. So they just promote them to a leadership role. And that's where a lot of that breakdown happens, but keep going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as I was selling and I had an opportunity to help others, I really found a lot of fulfillment in that. And it really kind of confirmed and solidified this idea of managing people. So, the transition at first was like cake, I'm like, this is great. This is, I don't have a quota every month. I'm not panicking if I'm going to lose my job if I don't hit quota in 3 months. But that went away very quickly, and it got damn hard. Because managing people is hard. Managing a book of business is of course hard too, but you have control over your business, and salespeople like control. When you manage people, that control goes away. You don't have the same control. It's about learning individual motivations and listening. Listening becomes so important. Getting to know your prospects is very different from getting to know the people that you manage. So you really have to make sure that you don't treat it the same. And I think that took some adjustment. I think another kind of trap that new managers fall into is this idea that, well, you know, I was successful selling this way. The people that I manage should sell just like me. And that is not the way to look at it. I think defining outcomes and letting them find their way, of course, with some coaching to those outcomes is really the best way to approach it. But make sure that you define those clear outcomes and expectations. But yeah, the transition was challenging. I luckily had kind of a bridge role between management. We call it a team lead. So that actually was probably the most challenging role that I've ever had because half of your role is individual contributor. So you're still selling, you still have the same quota as everyone else. But on top of that, you're managing 3 people, like a pod. So my brain constantly had to be going back and forth from, okay, sales mode, okay, coaching mode. So that was challenging, but again, confirmed that yes, managing people was something that I got a lot of gratification out of.
So how many people do you have in your team now?
So we have 10 people on the mid-market side, and then there's a group of 9 to 10 SDRs. So new business side, about 20 to 25 people.
Okay, awesome. That's amazing. And let's say you guys are hiring for a new position that would be underneath you. What kind of qualities do you look for in a hire? Like, who do you want on Micah's team where you're like, yes, I want you on my team. Let's do this together. Let's make things happen. Who is that person?
Yeah. So there's definitely some traits that I look for. Belief, right? Belief in what we're doing here is really important. Pride. I look for that and try to test for that.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, just pride in the work that you do, pride in the relationships that you build, pride in the company you work for and the people you work with. So, I mean, it's definitely hard to test for, but, building questions around that is something that I look for. I mean, curiosity, a competitive nature, and it doesn't necessarily need to be competitive with others, but competitive with yourself. It's funny, after I've kind of analyzed the DNA of our current sales team, strong personalities are actually the people that have done really well over the years. People that think provocatively, they think different about what we're doing. They manage pressure well. So those are just some of the things that come to mind. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if someone is looking to make a transition, what would you recommend for them?
Transition into sales or transition from contributing to leadership?
Yeah, sorry, contributing to leadership.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you really have to make sure that that's what you want. You have to ask a ton of questions. I read a ton of books.
What are your favorite books?
So, the Sales Acceleration Formula, First Break All the Rules, Servant Leadership. So those are some of the books that I read at the front of my management portion of my career. But I think just really sitting down and talking with people that have managed others for 1 year and 20 years. It's just really important to make sure that it's what you want and it's not just the next step that you're taking.
Okay. Awesome. So where do you think your career is going to go, Micah? So like ideally, that's always the $1 million question. Where would you be in 5 years from now? So where do you think that Micah will be 10 years from now?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. 10 years is a long time.
Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, it's a long time, but it goes quick. I mean, I want to be in a position where I am learning and teaching every day. Those two things are really important to me and fuel me. Titles are less important to me than the actual function that I'm doing. I mean, ultimately, I would love to manage managers, kind of help them with the career path that is, the early career path of management. Probably stepping into a larger sales management role. I also think consulting is interesting. So I probably will stay in the sales arena. Hey, I might be at a corporate organization. I might be at a startup. Who knows? Maybe I'll be an entrepreneur. Maybe I'll start a consulting business. I don't know. But I think as long as I am learning and teaching every day, I'll be happy.
I love that. What's the best career or life advice you've gotten?
So it's actually this quote. And I feel like, so never leave anything to chance is my mantra. That's kind of like what I live by. But this quote, I love this quote. So a person who procrastinates in choosing will inevitably have their choice made for them by circumstance. And I love this quote so much because it really does speak to my mantra of, if you want something, go out and get it. And don't leave it to chance. Have a contingency plan, have backup, and go after it. I think, that's the tenacity. You have to be tenacious, and you have to believe in yourself. And you have to work harder than your peers. You have to work, longer hours. You've got to put in the work, but it definitely will pay off.
Well, it's definitely worked for you in your career. So hopefully the listeners will find some value in that and also get some encouragement. I think oftentimes we get defeated if something doesn't feel like it's happening, but it's the pressing through and the pushing on. And I've watched you do that in your career, and it's very admirable. So what's the number one place if someone wants to connect with you, where can they do that?
Yeah. So my LinkedIn, so you can shoot me a message on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, really any social media handle. Of course, the Muse. So you can find me on the Muse. Shameless plug, I am hiring. So if you're interested in joining the sales team, email me or LinkedIn message is probably the best outlets.
And I can vouch for that. The Muse is an amazing company to work for. So excited for you and your career. Excited to see what the Muse is doing. They made some fun announcements this week. And we just thank you for spending time sharing a little bit about your career journey. And we hope, and I know that it'll be really beneficial to the people listening. So thank you so much, Micah.
Thank you. This was fun.
Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for listening to Your Career Story podcast. I would love to get to meet you. And there are a couple of ways that we can connect in between episodes. First and foremost, I love my LinkedIn. Second is via Instagram. And third is over on my website. I actually have a special spot just for you full of fun, free resources. So all you have to do is go to www.jennaviviano.com/resources. Super simple, for a bunch of freebies that will help you boost your career. Hope to see you next week.